let's talk about all the books that I read in the month of September. Hi, my name is Jeanette, and I want to thank you for joining me on the channel Jane Reads. So today I'm going to talk about some of the books that I read in the month of September. I need to film part 1 of this wrap up first before the end of the month because I need to return some books to the library. And I wanted to be able to talk about them. You'll see 3 of them are from the library. And I wanted to be able to talk about them before I returned them so that I could hold up the physical copy. But before I get into that, I got a package today and I did not order anything. So I'm assuming it's a book. So I'm going to open it now. And if it's not a book, well, I guess you'll find out what I got. Because you're going to find out either way. I don't have my right knife that normally opens these. It's purple! And is there a note? There is. I have enjoyed watching your content. You have inspired me to read more Christian suspense books too. Keep sharing your love for books and the love of Christ too. Thank you so much. I am going to message the person that sent this to me. But this, you know who you are. Thank you. Now, what is it? I love the purple. Wow. Nice. Obsession by Patricia Badley. This completes my set for the Natchez Trace Park Rangers. This is book 2 of the series. And this is so funny because just yesterday I filmed my sequel video, which you would have already seen or is posted before this one's going up. So if you haven't watched it, it will be linked below. But that video was all about my favorite sequels and they were all book 2s. So then this is book 2. That's awesome. That's so funny. So I don't really know much about it. I've never read Patricia Badley before, but I have books 1, 3, and 4. So yes, thank you so much. Okay, and going on the suspense train, the 4 books that I have read at the time of filming this, 3 of them are suspense. So the first one is 3 Missing Days by Colleen Coble. This is book 3 of the Pelican Harbor series. So I've completed a series in series September. Awesome. Okay, so this picks up from book 2 and book 1 really. We're following Jane and Reed, who we met in book 1, and their son Will. And they are not a functional family. They've been apart for a number of years. And there's a lot of things keeping them apart. And so this just kind of picks up on the continuing storyline that's happened in book 1 and 2. So I really can't talk much about it because it really continues. This was definitely my favorite book of the series. It was fast paced with a lot happening. And I really appreciated the way Jane and Reed kind of talked and communicated and did not keep secrets between them. And sometimes it did feel like there was too much happening being thrown at them at once. But kind of how could they compartmentalize the different things, like deal with it all? Like if I'd had that much thrown at me at one time, yeah, send me to like a padded cell because I'd be going crazy. Or I'd be curled up in a ball on my bed or my closet and not wanting to face reality. Yeah, so a lot happens, but it wraps up very nicely. We get answers from a lot of things. I really enjoyed it. As I said, this was my favorite of the series. Okay, then I buddy read, which was so not planned for September, but I did. And that was Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I buddy read this with Anne from In Search of Wonder and Catherine from Read Journal Love. So their channels will be linked below. And I am so glad I buddy read this with them because it really made me think about some things and helped me understand more of what I was reading. So this is a dystopian. I had read it in high school and I remembered really enjoying it in high school. But that's about all I remembered about it. And when I started it, I'm like, I don't really follow what's going on. Like, how did I enjoy this book? I mean, it was 20 some years ago when I read it. And again, it was a class assignment, so it would have been class discussion going on. So having the buddy read discussion going on really helped again. But there was a lot of things in this with references to the Bible and remembering scripture and what else? Like just a lot of faith referenced at the time, which I was really shocked at. Like one thing that really stood out to me is the importance of memorizing the Bible because you might not always have the book to read. Like, or thinking for yourself and not just going with the flow. So we are following the main character of Montague, who is a fireman, who the fireman's duty is now to destroy books. So they basically start fires rather than put out fires. But Montague is kind of realizing why something makes him question, how did firefighter role become this? And why are we doing this? And it was really interesting to read. And it really gave me a lot to think about. I did rate this 4 stars. But as I get kind of a little bit more thinking about it, especially because at the beginning I was very confused on what was going on. And if it wasn't for Anne and Catherine, I would be like completely lost. And the part 3, so there is no chapters in this one. It is part 1, part 2, and part 3. And part 3 has a lot of language in it. A lot of language. And I was really shocked because part 1 and part 2 did not have nearly as much. So I think it's really more of a 3.5 for me. But yeah, but I highly recommend reading it just for the perspective of making you think about things and why we do things and what we watch, what we listen to, what happens to those around us, how we interact. It was really interesting. Okay, then I read The Heart of a Hero by Susan May Warren. This is book 2 of this Global Search and Rescue series. And I'd read book 1 in August, so I continued the series. And in this one, we are following Jake and Aria, who we met in book 1. So there is continuing characters. There's a continuing storyline, not with Jake. Well, maybe a little bit with Jake and Aria. I always want to say her name wrong. But I was listening to the audiobook, and it's Aria. I always want to say, I don't know. They're just, the names are written weird. Jake is not, but the rest of the names are written kind of weird. But, so Jake goes down to Florida to find Aria, who is in the Florida Keys on vacation, and a hurricane's coming. And there is so much danger that happens. So many incidences of danger. But the relationship, we're watching the relationship build, and there was times I liked Jake. I really liked Jake, and I would have loved to spend the whole time with him. But then there's Aria, who I didn't mind, but the way she kind of treated Jake, she was very hot and then cold and hot and cold. And it was just come on, girl, make up your mind. She just kind of annoyed me a little bit. Then there is a secondary storyline going on with Hamilton, who, again, we met in book 1. His story really continues from book 1 to book 3. And There's scenes that happen overseas that I just did not care about, wasn't following at all. So I was invested in the story for what was going on in Florida with Jake, really is what I cared about. I give this book 3 stars because there's a lot of unrealistic things happening, I think, at times. Just a lot happening. But I did continue the series, and I finished the series with The Price of Valor. So this is book 3. And this one focuses mainly on Hamilton. And then it also picks up with Orion from book 1. And so the Hamilton storyline in this one, I liked more than I liked in book 2. And so I started to really kind of care for him and what was going on. The Orion storyline, I liked them. Like, I liked the couple. But again, it was just talk. Like, so much hurt and pain could have been solved if they had just communicated. Like, yeah. But then we've got the Hamilton storyline going on. And there was so much background and stuff that it was like, wait, what? But with Hamilton's storyline, what's going on with him and his romance interest or partner, basically, a lot of characters from Susan May Warren's previous books, especially like Marshall characters, so like the Marshall family and other Marshalls. Again, it's a family, not the occupation. So there is the Montana Marshalls, and then there's these other Marshalls that own a vineyard, or maybe the Montana ones own the I don't know. I don't remember. I have read one of the Marshall series, but I haven't read the other one. I just knew the names of the characters because the books are the names of the characters. So I've seen them talked about, but there was times of like, I have no idea. And it seemed very convenient that they always ran into somebody they knew, or that this person was connected to this person through that. Like, it just, I know at times, like, the world is small. Like, I totally get it. I was vacationing once in California. We were from Saskatchewan, we were living in Saskatchewan. I was actually at school in Winnipeg at the time, so my parents were living in Saskatchewan. I was in Manitoba, and we went on vacation to California, and somebody I worked with at home in Saskatchewan was on vacation staying at the same hotel. So, I mean, I know that the small world happens. I get it, but it happened a lot. So I gave this book 3 stars because, well, I liked the characters and kind of seeing the relationship build. It was the mystery, intense suspense line that was going on that I just wasn't really caring about that much. CIA and spies are very heavily mentioned and involved in this book. So espionage a lot. The one thing I will say, there's a huge faith discussion in both of these books between various characters, a lot of faith discussions, which I really appreciated. So those are the 4 books that I've read so far. And then stay tuned because I will be back with what I've read the rest of the month. So this video is not over yet. You'll see me in a second, but really it'll be probably a couple weeks by the time I film it. Okay, so I am back to talk about the rest of the books I read in the month of September. And the first book I'm going to talk about is one that I just finished September 30th, and it released on October the 1st. So it is out by the time you see this video. And that is Over the Edge by Irene Hannon. This is book number 2 of her Undaunted Courage series, and I had an advanced reader copy of this through NetGalley, so I was privileged to read it ahead of time. And so we are following, I'm struggling with this character's name. We are following Jack Tucker. I'm struggling because the book I'm currently reading has a Jake. Okay, so we are following Jack Tucker, who is a police detective, and he is the brother of Bree Tucker, who was the main character in book number 1, Into the Fire. Then we meet Lindsay, who is a witness for Jack. Wow. So, and Lindsay ends up walking in on a murder, or just after a murder has happened. She is the witness for the murder case, and Jake has to interview her. So that is how the two originally meet. Then, as the investigation goes on, events happen that kind of make Jack, wow, make Jack question whether Lindsay is a reliable witness or an unreliable witness, and which way does it go. And I loved Lindsay. She was such a strong and resilient character. She has been through a lot. This is not her first case with the police. And so she is working with a psychologist and dealing with her emotions and the trauma that is happening. But she carries on. She keeps with her commitments that, like she goes to work, does what she needs to do, continues teaching the class that she's teaching. And in the midst of that, trying to just keep going, she also shows her caring nature for those around her. Somebody is sick and she goes and takes soup to them. She is a cook or a chef. Cook, chef, same thing, right? So I loved Lindsay, like the way, just following her. And then there were things that happened that just made me question. I thought, oh, it's going this way. And then a twist or a reveal happens. It was like, wait, what? I did not see that coming. And so it kept me on the edge of my seat. The thing that really I struggled at the very beginning of this book, because there was a couple scenes in it, was like, I've read this before. Or I know this story. Have I read this book? And it just really made me question. Now, it's possible that I had read a preview of it and that's why it seemed familiar to me, because they usually do a preview in a previous book, right? However, this wasn't like chapter 1 or chapter 2 where this scene happened. So then I was like, I don't know. So that just, it really threw me off when I had started reading the book, because all I could think about was, where have I read this before? Why does this seem familiar to me? That it took me a bit to actually get invested in the characters themselves, because this was a side storyline that seemed familiar, not the main storyline. But because I was so distracted by the side storyline, it took me a bit to get into the main storyline. So that's the only thing about it. And other than mentions of them going to church, there is not much faith in it. There's not much faith discussed or anything. So, but the suspense side of it and the way the romance built up, I was invested and really enjoyed. So I gave this book 4 stars, probably maybe a 4.5. But yes, I really enjoyed it and I do recommend it. Okay, and now sticking on Irene Hannon, I also read Sandcastle Inn. This is book number 10 of the Hope Harbor series. And we meet Vienna and Matt. So both of them are new to Hope Harbor and are visitors to Hope Harbor. Matt has come to help his sister kind of as a relaxing vacation away from his vet practice. He's taking kind of a sabbatical. And he's come to help his sister with the B&B that she has purchased, but it needs a lot more work than she expected. And so he's there to try to kind of oversee it, because his sister Kay leaves town for a month to look after a sick friend. And so Matt is the guy on site trying to deal with it and checking in with Kay of what's going on. And then Vienna has come to town to visit her mother, who owns the local bookstore. and her mother kind of, they tend to clash growing up, like throughout the years. And now Vienna is seeing her mother in a different light. And so I loved the relationship interaction between the daughter and mother, the brother sister, and then there's another storyline going on with two other characters who are married. And so I liked getting the different relationships, interactions between those people and watching them kind of work together to fix up this B&B and the way things come together and kind of piece together, and just in the right moment at the right time you can help this person, and like your skills are needed here. I really enjoyed that. The romance itself, I just didn't feel. It felt like a lot of the romance happened off the page. Like you've got the meeting that happens, kind of getting to know each other a little bit, but they don't interact a lot. And then once they kind of express interest in that other person, you don't see much happen, and all of a sudden they're together and really happy and kind of planning possible changes to their life because of the romance and, other things that God has put in their path. I liked it. I just wish we had seen more of it grow. So again, I gave this 4 stars because I really enjoyed the characters and especially the interactions with the various relationships. I would like to see more of that romance itself develop. Okay, then I listened to Playing for Pizza by John Grisham. So I needed an audiobook to listen to, and I thought, well, maybe if I go through like what's available for my John Grisham books, I will get through them because they're just kind of sitting on my shelf and I really need to make a decision on them. So this one was the only one that was available to me on Libby at the time. Everything else I had to put a hold on. So, okay, this is the one I'm going to read. Not knowing that it is a football heavy. We are following Rick, who is an NFL quarterback, who is not doing so well in the NFL. And so no teams want to sign him after the most recent incident that happened. And he ends up going over to Italy to play in their football league, which is still American style football. And they're playing for the Italian Super Bowl. And so we're following that. And Rick is kind of a all about him type character. Doesn't care, doesn't know anything about Italy or the culture or anything, has no desire to learn the language or anything. And he gets thrown into this Italian town, and majority of the players are Italian. There's only 3 Americans. Most of them do not speak English, so he is very out of his element. And so there is a lot of culture described. I want to say John Grisham really loves Italy because this is the second book that I've read that's got a very heavy Italian setting and describing the food and the town itself and the cars they drive. Like there was a lot of descriptions, so it was easy to picture where you were and kind of getting into that setting. What I did not like about it is, I don't care about football at all. No interest at all. I know nothing. So when they're talking about football plays or what's happening on the field, sure, no idea. Somebody tackled somebody, I think, or ran into somebody. I don't really know. And then about 60% in, it got to be about Rick was looking for a woman to have a good time with. And she wanted to see the sights, and he just wanted to spend time in the bedroom. And I'm just like, I should have DNF'd this book at that point, because it just got dirty, I want to say, really. And it's not described a ton in detail, but it's Rick looking at this woman's body and be like, come, I don't want to see this, I want to do this. And I'm just, yeah. So I gave it book 2 stars because also at the end, it just ends. And like, there's no wrap up, no growth of character, no nothing. It was just like, okay, what's next for Rick then? I have no idea. So yeah, so this was a 2-star. This is going to be unhauled because it is not for me. Okay, now, the series that I read in the month is Sunrise at Normandy by by Sarah Sundin. Okay, this is actually book 3. So book 3, should I go in book order? The Sea Before Us is book 1. The Sky Above Us is book 2. And book 3 is The Land Beneath Us. So in this series, it is early World War II, and they are basically leading up to D-Day. And so D-Day does happen June the 7th, June the 8th, June the 7th, I think. Does happen near the end of each book. And we are following 3 Paxton brothers who in the prologue have had a falling out. And so then we're following them through, and can they fix this falling out and reestablish their relationship with one another, or are their parents going to lose them, the 3 brothers, or one of the 3, or 2 of the 3? Like, is the family going to be whole before they lose one of them to the war or in the war? So one brother is, I want to say, an intelligence officer. Now, I'm wondering, did I even have them? Oh, I did have them right in there. So a naval officer, pilot, and a ranger. I'm not going to tell you which is which. You can figure that out once you read it. And so they each meet female characters, all kind of connected in some way to their positions, or that's how they meet them, is through their positions with the wartime efforts. And the women kind of help them grow and encourage them to reconnect with their brothers and kind of figure out, can they reestablish this relationship and fix the relationships, and will they find romance in the process? I really enjoyed these books. Really enjoyed it. Because they're mainly over in England and France, Germany area, and Texas is their home state, so where they grew up and where mom and dad are. And one of them spends a lot of time stationed in Tennessee before going overseas. So there is a lot of American, like, time spent on American soil, but there is also a lot of time spent on European soil. And there are letters that happen between various characters throughout. And there is one book in particular that has a lot of more letters in it than any of the others. Kind of a romance kind of developing through letters. And I loved it. There is one book, which I'm not going to tell you which one because you need to read the series because I don't want to spoil anything for you. It is basically a marriage of convenience, but without the forced proximity, because one of the brothers is overseas fighting in the war, and the woman is at home. But where's her home? Is her home in the States or is her home in Europe? I'm not going to tell you that. And so I loved it because we watched, especially the 2 of them, grow closer to one another through letters and getting to know each other's heart more than being in their face with each other. So, because I don't want to spoil which one was my favorite, because you might be able to guess. If I tell you which one's my favorite, you might be able to guess which one has my favorite trope in it. So I don't want to tell you. But I will tell you, I gave one book 4.5 stars, and I gave 2 of them 5 stars, because I just love them. So this is a series that I highly recommend reading and really enjoyed. And it would be hard to choose. Well, I would say it would be hard to choose a favorite, but I mean, I do have a favorite out of the 2 5 stars. But I'm not going to tell you which one that is. Maybe, probably, we'll tell you when I do the end of the year wrap up, because I'll have my favorite books of the year. So then you will find out for sure. I mean, you can also probably check my Goodreads, and I'm pretty sure my review says this was my favorite of the series. So yeah, but I loved it. I am so glad I read it, and I'm so glad I read it back to back so that I could stay with these characters and really get to know the brothers and each of the females. And yeah, I loved it. I highly recommend it. Okay, so that is all the books that I read in the month of September. I read 10 books, which shocked me because the month started out really slow, especially because we were away for a week and I only read 1 book during that week. Was it? Yeah. I didn't even finish a book while we were away. I actually finished it when we got back home. So I did not expect to have 10 books. But it was a great month, and I added another couple 5 stars to my list, so that's awesome. And I finished 2 series and got caught up on, no, I finished 3 series and I got caught up on a series. Like, I'm up to date on a series. So it was a very productive series September for me. Yay. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I would love to chat in the comments below. Have I encouraged you to read any of these books, or what was your favorite book in the month of September? Thank you for taking the time to watch, and I hope you will stay tuned for future videos. Have a good day.